The National Desk, America's News, now.
Excessive heat warnings, millions of Americans at risk. Just when we can expect the heat dome to be lifted?
Best way to ensure that there's not another civilian casualty is for the ceasefire deal to go forward, for Hamas to accept it. It's as basic and as simple as that.
Secretary Antony Blinken making his 8th trip to the Middle East. Is there any hope a ceasefire deal is getting closer? And chocolate warning why the FDA is sounding the alarm on certain bars that could put people in the hospital. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David, and right now, a line of severe storms crossing the Dakotas, bringing heavy rains, damaging winds, and the possibility of large hail. Parts of Texas, south of Dallas, as well as Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida are also at risk of severe thunderstorms. Meanwhile, nearly 25 million people in the Southwest are under heat alerts. Parts of Northern California, Nevada, and Arizona are under excessive heat warnings. The National Weather Service says these heat warnings could be in effect for the Phoenix area until at least Thursday. And developing right now, fire officials urging residents in one Miami neighborhood to evacuate or stay indoors as firefighters work to settle a massive fire that ripped through an apartment complex this morning. And take a look at this. You can see the intensity of the smoke as it poured out of the 4-story structure, which summoned 70 firefighters and 38 fire trucks to the scene. At least 30 people trapped inside were rescued, some from their balconies, including many elderly who were in wheelchairs. One person was also found shot inside of the building. The victim was taken to the hospital. Their condition is unknown. A shooter has not been identified, and the connection between the two incidents remains unclear. The mayor of Miami says this is the first 3-alarm fire in the city in 25 years. And tonight, the jury in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial just finished deliberating on day 1. They'll begin again in the morning. As the National Desk's Matt Gelka tells us, the president's son was not called as a witness on the final day of testimony.
Will you testify?
Hunter Biden and his defense team opted to not have the president's son testify in his criminal gun trial.
If it is just the prosecution's case and the defendant does not testify, then the burden is where it should be, which is on the prosecution. It's just too risky to have a defendant testify because you don't know what the prosecution is going to ask them.
Day 6 of the trial featured prosecutors recalling FBI Special Agent Erica Jensen to the stand. Jensen was asked about texts Hunter Biden sent between October 10th and 16th in 2018 about meeting someone at a 7-Eleven convenience store in Wilmington, Delaware. Biden had mentioned the store in a different message when he was waiting to buy drugs.
They had to show that at the time he bought this revolver, he was using drugs and was a drug addict. And they've proved that from a number of sources, particularly Hallie Biden, who's got him through text messages that he was, purchasing crack cocaine during that time period.
The timing is important because Biden bought a revolver on October 12th. He's charged with 2 counts related to lying about not being a drug addict during the time of the purchase, along with a charge related to owning the gun while abusing drugs. But Biden's defense team asked Jensen if there was location data to confirm he was at the convenience store when he sent the October 10th message. Jensen replied she didn't have that. Jensen was the only rebuttal witness called before closing arguments began Monday afternoon. In part of his final words to the jury, prosecutor Leo Wise gestured to the Biden family members in attendance, including Hunter's stepmother, First Lady Jill Biden, saying respectfully none of that matters, before telling the jurors that the evidence in the trial was all that mattered and that no one is above the law. President Biden has been supportive of his son while trying to keep his distance, and the First Lady has been in attendance on most court days. President Biden vowed not to pardon Hunter if he is found guilty, and the harshest sentence could carry 25 years in prison. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Matt, thank you. Former President Trump just completed a virtual pre-sentencing probation interview for his hush money conviction. A probation officer will prepare a report from today's interview for Judge Juan Merchan to assist in determining the proper sentence. Donald Trump and his lawyers can make the case for why he deserves a light sentence. Formal sentencing will be done on July 11th. Trump's legal team is preparing an appeal of the conviction. A major highway weaving through the mountains of western Wyoming remains closed today after part of it collapsed on Saturday in a massive landslide. No one was injured. There's no timeline for the repairs, though, and the road is expected to remain closed long term. That could jeopardize much of the workforce around Jackson Hole, Yellowstone, and Grand Teton National Park. It's the only direct route between Victor, Idaho, and Jackson, Wyoming. The U.S. Coast Guard Academy's head of sexual assault prevention says she's resigning because she was told to lie to sexual assault victims and Congress. Shannon Norenberg claims the Coast Guard gave her false talking points and prohibited her from helping survivors access key resources as part of a major cover-up. The Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Linda Fagan will testify in front of Congress tomorrow on the issue. And we are about a month and a half away from the start of the Paris Summer Olympics, and security officials there are trying to get ahead of a range of threats now targeting the games. One is this image circulating online depicting a drone aimed at the Eiffel Tower, believed to come from ISIS. The National Desk's Atra al-Nashar has a closer look at the threat.
European media reports of a chilling image showing a drone with a so-called gift headed for the Eiffel Tower, with the words, "Lone Wolves Olympics have begun with the will of Allah," believed to have come from ISIS. It's the latest threat to what's expected to be a historic Olympics in Paris, with the biggest opening ceremony ever in the works.
We all know that the security of such a big event is definitely the most important thing.
The president of the Paris Olympics Organizing Committee says an unprecedented level of security measures are being put in place. French authorities recently charged an 18-year-old man from Chechnya for allegedly planning an attack on soccer events at the Olympics on behalf of the Islamic State. There's been an active campaign by Islamic State-affiliated media outlets to promote attacks on stadiums in Europe, like those being used in the Olympics, according to the threat intelligence platform Recorded Future. The increase in jihadist radicalization and mobilization in Europe since the Israel-Hamas war began, they say, also adds to the risk. ISIS's attack in March on a Moscow concert hall, giving the world a stark reminder of its willingness to carry out violence. Also looming over the games is the threat of cyber attacks and malign influence campaigns. Russia is the most likely culprit on this front, Recorded Future says, retaliation for France's support for Ukraine and for the ban on Russian and Belarusian athletes representing their countries. The State Department reacting to a Microsoft report detailing deep fakes and fabricated claims deployed by Russia to discredit the Olympics and set expectations that there will be violence.
We've seen them sow disinformation across any number of fronts, and it's especially not surprising that they're doing it with respect to the.
Now, experts say threat levels could depend on developments in both Ukraine and the Middle East between now and the start of the games in late July.
And Atra, perhaps surprisingly, China is not considered to be a threatening actor here in terms of the Olympics. Why is that?
Yeah, you know, usually when we talk about cyber threats, China is at the top of the list of bad actors. But Intel experts at Recorded Future point out that China and France currently have a pretty stable and positive diplomatic and economic relationship. You may recall French President Emmanuel Macron did not participate in that 2022 boycott of the Beijing Games. China also doesn't have the same history as Russia in going after the Olympics. Instead, the Games are really a huge source of pride for China. So undermining them in any way would certainly be sort of a self-inflicted wound.
All right, Atra al-Nashar live from Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you, as always. And the Supreme Court has agreed to hear an appeal from Facebook to end a lawsuit brought by their own shareholders related to a massive data breach at the social media company. In 2019, Facebook agreed to pay just over $5 billion to settle charges with federal regulators after private information of millions of users was obtained through a data breach. Investors argued that Meta didn't disclose enough about the damage caused by the breach. While Meta says it was open about the potential harm caused by the breach, the appeal will be heard in October. Around $450,000 worth of suspected cocaine that washed up on an Alabama beach is now in the hands of authorities. The Mobile County Sheriff's Office said police alerted them to several packages of the drugs, some labeled with a % sign that were found on the west side of Dolphin Island. And it happened one day after divers found the same amount of cocaine off the Florida coast. Coming up here, the Secretary of State is in Israel again, pushing for a 6-week ceasefire plan. What's included in the latest proposal? Then, hundreds of thousands of Stellantis cars and trucks are being recalled because of a crash risk. Which brands and models are affected here? Plus, the agency in charge of traffic safety may not be doing enough to protect people from the potential dangers of driver assistance technology. What's in a new revealing report when we come back? U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel tonight for his 8th trip since October 7th, touting an American-brokered ceasefire proposal that has the power to bring war hostilities in Gaza to an end. This as the UN Security Council votes 14-0 for both Israel and Hamas to abide by the deal that has not been formally agreed to by either side. Blinken today saying he would upkeep the pressure on leaders in the Mideast to come to a deal and make a plan to ensure a hopeful path forward on the day after.
In the absence of a plan, it leaves Hamas returns, or we have a total vacuum and you just have chaos, lawlessness, criminality, jihadist groups, etc. So it's imperative that there be a plan. And that has to involve security, it has to involve governance, it has to involve reconstruction.
Hamas has yet to provide an official response to the proposal, which includes a 6-week pause on fighting, the withdrawal of Israeli troops from heavily populated areas, the freeing of all women, elderly, and children, and a surge in humanitarian aid to the starving enclave. According to the Wall Street Journal, mediators say Hamas is opposed to any deal that doesn't include an immediate and permanent ceasefire. The Food and Drug Administration is warning against anyone eating any flavor of diamond shrooms, microdosing chocolate bars. These are chocolates made with nootropic and functional mushrooms, according to the company's website. Multiple people have fallen ill, with at least 6 hospitalizations in 4 states with severe symptoms, including seizures, after consuming these chocolate bars. The FDA says they do not know how many retailers sell the product or how many states in which it is available. And gold is becoming harder to find these days. That's according to the World Gold Council. The industry can't keep up with production growth. In fact, council leaders say it's more difficult to find new gold deposits around the world. And even if there is a new area, they say there's only a small chance there's enough gold to put in the effort to mine. It can take 10 to 20 years before a mine is ready for production. A top International Monetary Fund official is warning the U.S. to get its financial house in order. IMF's deputy managing director told the Fiscal Times recently the U.S. has a lot of room to drop their national deficit given the economy's massive growth when compared to other nations. She says financing all spending through borrowing is not sustainable. The White House is laying the blame on the 2017 tax cuts, not excessive spending.
The tax cuts ballooned the deficit by $2 trillion and produced very little in terms of any additional investment or growth. And so, if you look at contributions to the debt and deficits, those really, the large contributions came under the previous president.
Those cuts are set to expire next year, although President Biden wants to keep some of them, while Republicans want them all extended. Conservatives believe big spending during Biden's first year as president is driving deficits. The IMF supports plans to increase taxes on wealthy Americans. The Democratic National Committee is giving nearly $2 million to state parties to help Democrats win down-ballot races this November. The money will go toward the on-the-ground organizing, data management, and voter turnout initiatives in 11 non-battleground states. The Republican National Committee is also boosting state-level investment. Stellantis has issued a recall for hundreds of thousands of vehicles. The recall is due to a malfunction that can disable the vehicle's stability control systems. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says this outage can increase the risk of a crash. Recall affects just over 211,000 vehicles, including the 2022 Dodge Durango and the 2022 Ram 2500 and Ram 3500 pickup trucks. Dealers will update the control module software free of charge. A Long Island woman suing Cold Stone Creamery because its pistachio-flavored ice cream doesn't contain real pistachios. A federal judge just allowed the lawsuit to move forward. The lead plaintiff, Jenna Marie Duncan, claims several flavor names are in fact misleading. Court records show Cold Stone's parent company tried to have the case dismissed, arguing the ingredients are available online. The state of Missouri faced off against Planned Parenthood in court today. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey filed a lawsuit in February against Planned Parenthood, saying they assist in taking minors across state lines to seek out abortions. The lawsuit says it is against Missouri law to intentionally cause, aid, or assist a minor to obtain an abortion without parental consent in another state. The Attorney General says he is seeking an injunction to the practice. And we have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Shana O'Connor, who didn't want us to show his face, says he's helped hundreds of asylum seekers when they had nowhere else to turn.
They're trying to discredit me about the work that I do.
As we get a complaint, we will look into the complaint just like...
In a court filing, the Attorney General alleges that O'Connor exploited his position as a religious leader to gain the trust of new Mainers. He allegedly took thousands of dollars for providing legal assistance with immigration paperwork, though O'Connor is not a lawyer or expert.
We did bring action against him for violating the Maine law that requires a person be authorized to provide these services.
Many fans were disappointed with Friday night's show at Eagle Mountain Casino. Stand-up comedian George Lopez left the audience hanging as he cut his set short. Eagle Mountain Casino posted this on Facebook, stating, "Tonight, George Lopez let down his fans and sold out audience by walking out and ending his show 30 minutes early. George hired his own private security that could have easily escorted any hecklers out. We had a pre-show meeting to have a plan in place for hecklers. He could have provided us an opportunity to allow our security team to escort any hecklers out, since his private security did not. The comedian rescheduled his original gig on April 20th due to a medical emergency. Many audience members are voicing their opinions on social media, saying, quote, "We were having such a great time. Wonderful dinner, gambling, laughing, and then all of a sudden it was over so fast. Everyone was in shock."
She was at least 10 years old when she died. Yeah, this is something that's hit us pretty hard.
Staff of the Center for Coastal Studies on Cape Cod said the young female humpback named Chunk was a favorite of theirs and many other whale lovers.
This whale in particular was one that was really, really well known and really loved. Just from a public point of view, it's a tremendously sad event, but it is also one that's highlighting the unfortunate things that these whales face.
The whale was found entangled in fishing nets. It was alive at first, but was dead when the Marine Patrol got to her. Last night, it was taken to this farm in Gorham, where an animal autopsy got underway late this morning.
Not fully understanding how high-tech car safety features work can be dangerous. Why the government may need to do more to protect drivers. Stay with us. The federal agency charged with keeping you informed and safe on the roads should do better, and so should car manufacturers and dealers, according to a new government report. It all has to do with what we've been reporting on for years: consumer misconception and over-reliance on high-tech driver assistance features like automatic brakes and blind spot warnings. Spotlight on America's Lisa Fletcher investigates.
From helping you stay in your lane to braking and checking your blind spots, cars are being designed to save you from a crash. But the features aren't fail-safes, making it crucial that all drivers know the limitations.
What are the risks? Drivers don't fully understand the capabilities and the limitations of driver assistance technologies.
That could lead to misuse of those technologies, or they could turn them off. They may over-rely on the technology, pay less attention.
Andrew Van Ah is the author of a Government Accountability Office report that found 1/3 of drivers surveyed had little to no knowledge about the driver assistance technologies on their vehicles. And nearly 80% of drivers didn't know that blind spot warnings do not detect vehicles passing at extremely fast speeds. Then there are the automatic emergency brakes. As we've been reporting for years, the systems don't work well at night, and sometimes not at all, because darkness can limit the function of cameras that are supposed to detect hazards. According to one survey, 1/3 of drivers don't know that those sensors or cameras can be blocked by dirt, ice, or snow.
We want to make sure that drivers are continuously paying attention to the road, that they're actively driving, that they're not letting these technologies take over and do things that they are not really designed or meant to do.
The GAO went undercover in 10 car dealerships in Virginia and Maryland to see what buyers were being told, and found some salespeople giving buyers false confidence in the safety systems. During one visit, a salesperson told an undercover buyer the system would basically drive itself unless the road was covered in snow.
So they're trying to sell a car, right? So it makes perfect sense. But when we asked a little bit further about some of the limitations, some dealerships, were a little bit better about talking about some of those limitations, that you shouldn't drive it in these conditions, and others really kind of glossed over the limitations quite a bit.
The report found the federal agency in charge of traffic safety, NHTSA, isn't doing enough to get the facts to consumers.
We've recommended on a couple of occasions for NHTSA to take action. The agency has been hesitant to sort of move forward with that.
About half of the automaker web pages GAO reviewed provided partial or no information on the limitations of driver assistance technologies.
Is there a need to streamline all of that information to consumers to reduce risks?
It would be useful to have it all in one place. I think there's more that NHTSA could do to bring information down about what's known onto their website to provide a one-stop shop for consumers.
To make sure drivers don't get steered in the wrong direction. NHTSA has agreed to the recommendations in the report. It has until September to provide a detailed response to the Government Accountability Office. To see all of our reporting on driver assistance technology, go to SpotlightInvestigates.com.
An escaped bull caused chaos in Oregon over the weekend. What happened after the animal jumped the fence during a bull riding event? When we come back. A lucky escape. Take a look at this. You're looking at the aftermath of the Austrian Airlines plane right now, and that thankfully landed safely in Vienna after hitting a major hailstorm that appears to have caused the nose of the plane to fall right off. Look, you can see it right there. The airline says a Mayday emergency call was made during its flight from Spain after the storm that the crew says wasn't visible on the radar. And the plane's nose ended up damaged along with the cockpit, where the glass in the windows appeared totally cracked. And a wild story from our station in Oregon. 3 people were hurt on Saturday after this bull jumped the fence during a bull riding event about 150 miles outside of Portland. The big animal ended up running through rodeo grounds and returned to the livestock pens after the escape, thankfully. The conditions of those injured isn't known, but the rodeo hosting the event has reported all 3 wounded are now home. And that does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.